It has been a revelation in the world with 24/7 soccer now, having Morning Footy to wake up to and watch a discussion about soccer. It's always great. But Gary Neville interview this morning on Morning Footy was very interesting. Picking up on a Jude Bellingham conversation from what we had earlier with Fabrizio Romano potentially making that move to Real Madrid, Neville said he understands why Manchester United is not an attractive proposition for the player. Take a listen.
I said 2 years ago, I think it's changed slightly in the last 12 months with Erik ten Hag, but I said 2 years ago that Manchester United has become a graveyard for expensive signings. If you look at the signings over the last 5 to 10 years, there's only really Bruno Fernandes that's excelled as a signing that's come in and really done well. A lot of the other signings that have been made in the last 5 or 10 years have struggled to meet the expectation levels that you had expected from them when they signed. So I think that when Jude Bellingham looks at, say, for instance, at the moment, Harry Maguire, who was an expensive signing, who was well thought of, when he looks at other examples in this last 5 or 10 years about how Manchester United have developed players, I think that to me is understandable why he would look at Manchester City and Real Madrid. That is what this ownership have done in the last 10 years since Sir Alex Ferguson have left. They've allowed the sporting project to deteriorate to such a level where now Manchester United isn't the first club that you think of when you're a young player thinking of going playing at the best clubs in Europe. And that's a real problem. You know, as I said before, 10 years ago when Sir Alex Ferguson was at the club and in that first period of the Glazer ownership, we had the best stadium, the best training ground and the best team, and we were an attractive proposition. We've now become a proposition that isn't as attractive. So Jude Bellingham, I understand completely that he would want to go to other clubs at this moment in time, but do find it frustrating, of course.
Before we do go to break, I need to get your opinion on this one. Your thoughts, Michael Lahoud. It's quite interesting to hear Gary Neville talk like that about his beloved Manchester United.
Yeah, I think it's honest. I think it's a very honest assessment. The club has been disarray. It's been 10 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left. And one of the things that Fergie was adamant about was not just having the experience, the old guards, but reinventing the team with young players. Fergie was a believer in young players and getting young British talented players to come in and change the club. United have lost their way, but keep an eye on the top four race. If they get back in Champions League, if they get the trash out, Harry Maguire, I'm looking at you, then there is hope for the future after all.
I think having Ten Hag there is every opportunity for them to continue to get better and better and be a much more attractive club for obviously to pull the best players in. But you've got to be playing Champions League football, and that's the most important thing. You also got to develop the team around these best players there. It's crazy to listen to Gary Neville. When I was at United as a schoolboy, Gary Neville was just breaking into the first team. And I had the whole group right ahead of me at United. I had right ahead of me was like Wes Brown, and then ahead of him was all of that group. Scholesy, Giggs was already in the first team, but Scholesy was there. Neville was there, his brother was there, Bex was there, and now you're listening to these guys basically. I mean, they're all multi-millionaires, incredibly successful footballers, but basically now hammering Manchester United for the situation they're in. Before those boys became legends, it wasn't exactly in the perfect position either. He also went on to react and give his opinion on the takeover bids and his mistrust of US private equity. Take a listen to this.
There is the Jim Ratcliffe bid, there is the Qatari bid, and then there are a number of US investment funds like Carlyle Group, Elliott, that have come forward and said that they would put funds into the club. I don't want private equity money into an English football club. I'll be really clear. I don't think it works. I think that football is about emotion, sport is about emotion. I accept that in my life, I have, believe it or not, in Manchester, I have a partnership with a US private equity fund. And I believe in other sectors of life that I love international investment. But I think in football clubs, you can't go into it purely because you want to see pounds and pence return or a dollar return. I think you have to go into it because you want to invest in the team, in the sporting project. And when it comes to the current bids, at this moment in time, I've not seen the pledges, but I think Jim Ratcliffe has its merits. The state owned bid, or the Sheikh Jassim bid, I think has its merits. Let's wait and see. My main concern at this moment in time is that the Glazer family sell and that they remove themselves from the club. They'll make a lot of money. Well done to them for that. They've proved to be very astute business people. But now it's time to hand over control because the club has deteriorated under their ownership.
Yeah, great comments right there from Gary Neville. And also, I'll add, his book is fabulous. It's a great read.
Oh,
He
yeah.
clearly is a successful businessman. If you get a chance to read it, Mike, you'll really enjoy it. But as a businessman, he's incredibly successful, and his brain has always been on another level. Your thoughts on his comments there?
Similar to the first part of it, I'm really on par with Gary Neville. Love his vision for the club. I mean, he's a United fan through and through before he was a professional footballer and United legend. I'm there with him in a bit of a way. Look, the world is changing. Football is changing. Private equity firms are part of the equation, and minority investment. My biggest concern is if a private equity firm starts getting larger stakes into a club, because you need someone who's passionate. You see the disaster that just imploded with someone who took over a club at Chelsea Football Club to make money and who has no clue about football. That doesn't bode well if you're a historic club like Manchester United. Don't want that in my club.